Yeah, so I'm Nick Fowler. I'm a coach, performance coach. I consider myself a sports performance coach, if you will. Now, there's a little bit of a terminology shift there. A lot of people think about sports performance coaches as the coach on the field coaching the sport. And that's true, especially in football and maybe classic sports and in CrossFit, which kind of blends this idea of a sports performance coach and a strength and conditioning coach, because the sport is fitness, right? So this idea that a sports performance coach can be kind of all-inclusive is kind of how I've kind of come to define myself. I define coaching as a lot more than just writing a program. And I think that a lot of people get pegged into these little niches that fall short of what it truly means to develop an athlete. And so when we talk about intelligent training, I think that that's at the heart of it, is developing an intelligent athlete. Athlete development is at the heart of intelligent training. Training with purpose, both in intent of what you are doing and then how you're actually approaching that training session, your rest day, skill development, mindset development, nutrition. All that is huge, and especially when you're talking about kind of squeezing that extra 1% out of an athlete, it becomes that much more imperative to pay attention to the details. So I think that when we talk about intelligent training, it needs to be centered around purpose with intent. And it's talked about a lot these days where, intelligent training and training with purpose and, mindful training. And I think it's almost become cliched, but to actually implement it in a unique situation, and what that situation is an individual, right? If we look at every single person that we coach, that we're developing, it's a N=1 experiment, because genetics, age, background, history, even injury history, psychology. Genetics alone has so much to play in how people adapt, how people show up on game day, how they perform, how they excel. And so if we look at this idea of, everybody that sits in front of me is an N=1 experiment, then how do we even start to create ideas, structures around training methodologies, training ideas, right? How can I develop a protocol that I know will work, or I think will work? And a lot of times it's through experience. That's what I've probably learned the most, is that there's the science of coaching, which is the numbers and knowing that if you give someone back squats, they're going to get stronger at back squats, chances are. But then there's the other side of the coin, which is kind of the art of coaching, which takes that person into account, which I think it'll be impossible to define or develop protocols around how to deal with a person. There are definitely rules, guidelines, starting places, but it really comes down to having a conversation. A lot of times it's just clouded in misunderstandings or preconceived ideas or confirmation biases of saying, I think I want this, but what I really want is this. The classic one I see is, I really want to get strong, and my belief is that if I get strong and I lift weights, I'm going to look really good. So me wanting to look good naked is actually the goal, but I can't get through the idea that, I want to get strong because that's what's going to lead me to looking good. And I think a lot of times our self-awareness isn't even there to produce these realizations, So going back to this idea of a coach, I think the coach can be this observer. This coach is really at the heart of perspective. And I think that that's one of the biggest advantages when we're talking about athlete development. Just with anybody, right? Within even my own self, I can't, it's hard for me to see the forest through the trees a lot of times, right? Did I say that right? Forest through the trees? I think that's or the trees through the forest. Anyways, it's hard for me to have outside perspective on what actually is occurring. And so perspective versus reality is hard to kind of sift through at times. And I think a lot of times I find myself as a coach being that person, right? Bouncing ideas off of, or just being that person that can have a different perspective. Everyone shows up with a different degree of experience. And depending on your degree of experience, you might know a lot or you might know nothing. But at the end of the day, that all helps contribute to the plan that we're going to create. So intelligent training is also rooted in the athlete. And so I think that the first thing that needs to happen is this understanding, this acceptance, this realization that the value of having an intelligent athlete is paramount and is the cornerstone to really an intelligent training plan. And so, just like the example, right? If I want to get strong and that's what I'm telling you and you get me strong and I don't reach my goal because I don't look good, whose fault is that? It's no one's fault in particular, but that is just one example of being able to build, nurture, educate, and develop an intelligent athlete is paramount. Because if we can't even start with actually the goal, then the potential, the chances of achieving it are very rare. And so I think intelligent training is as much the coach's responsibility as it is the athlete's responsibility.